Morning, everybody. This is Coach Heather here. Nutrition news at Fit Buddy Bootcamp, and today we're talking about food allergies. Or allergies and sensitivities. Sorry. I'm going to talk more about sensitivities today, and then if we get the chance, we'll talk more about allergies and different ones that are out there. Basically, they are on the rise, and they're sort of more validated in the scientific field, which is nice because we've known for years that something is just not sitting right with us when we eat certain foods. This is of particular interest to myself. For those of you that don't know, I have celiac disease and I was properly diagnosed. So gluten and I just don't get along. And that's fine. We're good with that. It is what it is. And I work around it. So this is definitely something that I wanted to touch on. Going through the whole diagnosis thing was a little different of an ordeal, but once I found out what the issue was, life has been a lot sweeter since. It's just small accommodations and life goes on. So although food allergies are well recognized and represented for the most part, it's sensitivities that aren't quite getting the recognition that they need to, the appreciation for it, especially with gluten-free being more popular these days. That gluten sensitivity or that allergy to it is losing a little bit of awareness because it's not always a choice. For me, it's not a choice. If I do have gluten, my body will let me know about it. So it's not always a choice. It's a sensitivity or an allergy. So we're going to talk more about sensitivities today. Different foods. Also some signs that you may have a food sensitivity that you don't even know about. So the best way to identify a food sensitivity is the use of an elimination diet. For those of you that don't know what that is, it is basically taking your regular diet and eliminating one food at a time, seeing if those symptoms or signs dissipate when we eliminate one food at a time. If we start eliminating dairy, meat, soy, a number of different factors at once, we're not going to know which one is causing us those symptoms. So elimination diet is to tinker and play. At the end of the elimination process, if we think we've identified that food source that is giving us a little bit of a challenge, then we reintroduce it and make sure that yes, that is in fact the one. There are also different tests. You can do some blood tests out there, but an elimination diet is usually the easiest way to go through and assess what sensitivities or allergies you may or may not have to different foods. It's important to do that so that you're not over restricting yourself in terms of foods as well. So when I found out it was gluten, yes, that does take it a lot for me, but I know that it's not eggs. I know that it's not dairy or lactose or anything like that. So I'm not as limited as I thought I would have been at the point where I hadn't narrowed it down and found out what it was. When I was diagnosed, I did have to go and do proper testing with it. So it's always a battle sometimes, but when we get there, we get there. And it's sometimes a gray area, so not always the easiest waters to tread through. So if you are doing an elimination diet or tracking some of your symptoms, it's always good to keep a diary. List the dates, list the symptoms that you're feeling, and anything that you ate that day. If it's something that we can't figure out ourselves, at least we have a bulk of information that we can take to somebody else, a specialist that can help us through that a little bit, and they have something to start with. So always good to keep a list, a food diary, and then other factors as well that you should be noting in there, such as weather, mood, exercise that you may have done that day, menstrual cycles for my girls out there, and the overall effect anything had on your GI tract or your digestive symptoms overall that day. So definitely if we're having some issues, write it down and start keeping track. So how do we know we have a food sensitivity? Great question. So there are relatively about 7 signs that you do have a food sensitivity. First one is moodiness, brain fog, or headaches. If you've ever said like, oh, I just can't give up cheese, or I just can't give up this, there may actually be a little bit of truth to that. Foods like gluten, dairy, and sugar are all natural opiates that contain glutamorphins and casomorphins. So these morphin-like substances metabolize from foods containing wheat or dairy. The brain fog and moodiness that come when giving up these things may be signs of withdrawal. So our body does like those things. We like our gluten, we like our dairy, we like our sugar. So when we do come off of them, There is a bit of a moodiness, a brain fog, some headaches. So if you're experiencing that, that may be a sensitivity when you're having them, or going through withdrawal from them as well. Cravings, the rule everything in moderation doesn't always apply. That little bit of milk that you're adding to your coffee could be starting, a forest fire inside with digestive issues if you are sensitive or intolerant to lactose. So when you eat a food that you're sensitive to and it doesn't digest well, those undigested bits, they can permeate your gut and enter your circulation. And they don't belong in there. What happens when they do is that antibodies are going to rush to the scene, and they're going to want to create a defense, so for an immune attack in your immune system. So they're going to rush to the offense, those antibodies, to help protect the body. The problem that happens there, though, is that they start to prepare for a second wave or a third wave. When they have those particles in the body, they are anticipating that it is going to be a long battle. So they can accumulate. When all of these antibodies are present with nothing to do, they crave those things to break down. So what happens then? So say you're lactose intolerant, you put a little bit of the milk in your coffee, it permeates through your gut, those antibodies start to attack it, it's waiting for more lactose. It's not there, your body then craves it. So yes, everything in moderation doesn't always apply. Sometimes we just have to say no and be fine with that. And yes, you are going to crave those things that your body is telling you that you want or need. Don't give in. Typical cravings, they're going to get better within 3 or 4 days. So find that substitution that's going to work for you until you can sort of come down off that high point. Fatigue is another good sign of a food sensitivity. Sorry, not a good sign, but a common symptom of a food sensitivity. So foods should give you energy. They shouldn't zap it. When we continue to eat foods that don't work for our bodies day after day, it creates inflammation and immune responses. So not only are you not getting the energy from the foods that you need because you're not digesting them properly, but your body is also working harder to eliminate them and then heal itself. So your body's working overtime to try and handle these foods that it just should not have. Heartburn. A classic case of heartburn is a low tide of stomach acid. Drinking too much of any liquid with your meals could make the issue even worse. So a little acid that just sits down there washing up in your esophagus explains the burning. And since you don't have enough acid to break down the foods you're eating, it's likely permeating your gut and provoking those sensitivities. Joint pain, another symptom of sensitivities as well. It's actually one of the most common symptoms, but overlooked because a lot of people say, oh, I just have a bad knee, or oh, I'm getting old. Not always the case. It can be a sensitivity because foods like dairy, soy, gluten, they often come with unclean pests. So GMOs, antibiotics in the dairy, possibly hormones, pesticides, they're going to trigger inflammatory responses from the body. You'll start to get inflamed. Immune complexes love to settle in joints. So there is where the joint pain comes from. Eating an inflammatory diet is also going to raise cortisol and insulin resistance levels. So further adding to the chronic inflammation in the body. And it's just going to create that cycle. Once you eliminate the culprit, this symptom is usually alleviated within a few days. So when you find that thing that you're sensitive to, that joint pain is going to go away within a few days. So that is some great news. Acne, dark circles, rosacea. Our skin is our body's largest organ. When something's off inside, we can often see that on the outside. So our skin is a good marker for how our internal health is as well. So rashes, eczema, itchy ears, rosacea, acne, even dark circles under the eyes can be examples that our immune system is speaking through our skin. You may have heard the connection between dairy and acne, but rosacea and dairy can also be connected. So what we can do, we can eliminate the suspects one by one, give your skin a month to adjust to any changes and see if anything happens. Diet isn't the cure-all for all of their skin problems, but it could be the solution. So if you're at the end of your rope with what is going on with the skin, have a look in dairy and see if that's a possible food sensitivity that you may have. The last big sign of food sensitivities, gas, bloating, and constipation. Research is still preliminary here, but diets high in heavily processed foods may alter the composition of our gut bacteria. And I've talked about our gut bacteria a little bit before, so if you are more interested in that, have a look at some of our previous videos as well. So our gut bacteria, that can predict characteristics with our bodies such as weight, gas, bloating, and constipation. So just making sure that our gut health is in check is going to get us feeling better from head to toe. So those are some of the signs that you may have a food sensitivity. So how do you know which foods to eliminate? You just piece by one and start with some of the big culprits. So let's talk about some of the foods that we commonly see sensitivities to. And then see, like I said, track with a journal, pay attention to your body, how you're feeling, and what you're eating. So dairy products is a common food sensitivity. We hear the words lactose intolerant quite often, and that is one of the major ones. So for those who are sensitive, dairy products can cause gastrointestinal and or respiratory symptoms. So problems with the breathing as well may be exhibited. This means that they lack enough lactase, which is the digestive enzyme, necessary to digest the sugar lactose that is present in those dairy products. So dairy products also contain a protein called casein. Casein may be hard to digest and can result in allergy reactions with inflammation within the digestive system. So we're looking at that lactase, our body not having enough lactase to digest the lactose coming in from dairy products, and also possibly the casein that's contained in it. You'll see options that are lactose free, so that may work for some people, but if it's the casein that is causing the sensitivity, we may need to look at another alternative as well. If you choose to eliminate dairy products, then you would exclude milk, cheese, butter, yogurt, ice cream. The list of any product derived from milk of cows, goats, and sheep. So it is quite a long list, but if you are thinking it may be a sensitivity, then do your research, get the list, and just watch what you eat. Eliminate that and see if there are any results when you do eliminate those foods. Eggs, another one. So eggs have the notorious distinction of being on the top of the list of allergy foods for children. However, there's also protein within eggs that can cause some unwanted symptoms for different people as well. Egg whites have more of those proteins. So if you are going to include eggs in your elimination diet, it's best to avoid eggs altogether, not just the egg yolk. And some people would buy like the egg whites in the carton or just separate. But if you're going to try elimination diet with eggs, eliminate the entire egg. Once you have eliminated eggs from your diet for a period of time, you can then challenge the egg yolks or the egg whites separately to assess any reactivity then. Peanuts. For those of us that have kids, we know peanuts. Schools, we want nut-free lunches for our kids, but peanuts definitely on the top of the food allergy list. Even if you don't have an allergic reaction to peanuts, there remains the possibility that you're sensitive to them. So peanuts are not true nuts, but actually are classified as legumes. And signs of peanut sensitivity can include respiratory and digestive as well. So another one that we can track that breathing with and see if there are any symptoms there. Shellfish. Because they're on the top of the list for food allergens for adults, it may be a good idea to include them if you're doing an elimination diet. The reactivity is due to proteins found in this group of marine creatures. So shellfish, we're going to look for clams, crabs, lobsters, oysters, scallops, shrimps. Try eliminating those and see how it goes for you. Gluten, there's my guy. So gluten, it's a protein found in barley, wheat, rye, and must be totally avoided by individuals with celiac. However, it now appears that a person can have a gluten sensitivity even if they don't have celiac. That would be my sister. She has a sensitivity. She can have a little bit, but not a lot of it. And again, with all of these, there is a gray area. What might be tolerable for one person is different for the other person. There is some evidence that a gluten sensitivity might be the cause of IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, for some individuals. Gluten is suspected of being a factor in a wide variety of health and behavioral problems. And again, the research is still new, but definitely worth looking into. We lived in London for a time, and our neighbor, their youngest, their boy, was on the autism spectrum. They were recommended to go gluten-free with his diet, and they noticed amazing changes in his focus, attention span, and just overall mood. So there are some studies being out there, and everything's worth a try, right? So gluten, one of those ones that we're commonly sensitive or allergic to. Corn. So unfortunately, today's corn is not the corn that our ancestors used to eat. Recent studies, corn has shown up as one of the top foods to contribute to IBS symptoms. The tricky thing about eliminating corn is that now it is in so much of our processed foods, normally found in the form of high fructose corn syrup. So if corn is on your list, and that is what is causing the sensitivity, that is a very tricky one to try and eliminate. So just be mindful of that. Do the research, look online, and see what all your corn sources are. Soy. Soy is another one on the list for mainly children as well. Although many adults also attribute their IBS syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome symptoms, to eating soy-based products. So not only is it prevalent among kids, but also in adults as well. Like corn, soy and its derivatives are found in so many products nowadays that we do have to be diligent, read those labels. If in doubt, call the company and make sure you know what's going in that food, if it's not a whole food. But reading those labels and just trying to be as diligent as we can. Beef, pork, and lamb. Some people report a sensitivity to animal meats. Theoretically, this may be due to the way that livestock is now being reared or raised. Conventionally, raised livestock are given corn and soy as primary food sources as opposed to grazing on grasses in a pasture. In addition, these animals can be given hormones or antibiotics, all of which have the potential to affect the meat that we're eating. So if you think that these meats may be a problem for you, you can try pasture-raised animals and try eliminating things that way, or elimination diet based on different foods, and see how that has gone. In addition to the fact you may be eating meat of healthier animals, there's speculation that meat from properly raised animals contains components that are good for our gut health. So definitely it's worth looking into pasture-raised animals, grass-fed animals, and looking at that meat as an option as well. The last food source that we have on our list of sensitivities today is coffee. So many people report that drinking coffee stimulates their bowels. While for some people that is a good thing, for others, not so good. Coffee can contain proteins and chemicals that contribute to unwanted digestive symptoms. So if you're going to add coffee to the list of foods to avoid in your elimination diet, you will want to wean yourself off slowly. If you're a regular coffee drinker, you may experience some withdrawal symptoms with that as well. So if you are putting coffee into your elimination diet, just do it nice and slow. Take your time with it. So those are some of the things, some of the symptoms when it comes to food sensitivities, and also some of your primary culprits when it comes to food sensitivities. That is not the extensive list. The list goes on. I've run into people that are allergic to mushrooms, or they have a sensitivity to something different. You just never know. If in doubt, take it to a specialist. Start with your journal. You can start with an elimination diet and see, but just watch what you're eating and see when something comes up, when you have these symptoms repeatedly, have a look and see what you're eating and what is the common factor there. And you may be able to track it down very easily, or it may take an extended period of time. But definitely worth looking out. And I love that we're getting more awareness on this topic in general because it is something that affects a lot of people. I know this for a fact, obviously, but just in general, it's nice to see the awareness out there and the options that are out there for different people with different sensitivities and allergies. And it's sort of brought on a new wave in terms of labeling that I think is great with products. Getting consumers more aware of what we're putting in our bodies is never a bad thing. So I like the changes that have been coming, and I hope we see more of them. All right, guys. So this week at Fit Body Bootcamp, we are going to vote. We have our Flashback Friday happening next Friday. So we're going to vote. Tomorrow is Tacky Tuesday. So wear your tacky outfits. Don't let me down. Tomorrow is Tacky Tuesday. I will be here in the morning. Dip is here in the afternoon. And then Saturday, we have our Fit Ranks challenges coming up. So everybody's going to be testing, leveling up for Fit Ranks. And that's going to start at 10:30. And I'm super excited about that one. Thank you to everyone who joined us for a fabulous beach workout on Saturday. Great fun, great times. And we're going to have to do that one again soon. All right, so take care, everybody, and I will see you again next week. Okay? Bye-bye.